All right, welcome back. We are WEBD6201. That's client-side scripting in the winter 2022 semester at Durham, and it's week 14, part one of our broadcast and recording. And this is kind of a weird week because what's happening for this week is we have the topic is front-end framework with an Express API because it's Special Topics Week. And typically what I've done in the past for Special Topics Week is we cover one little thing. And this time we're covering how to do an API, how to convert which is kind of something that we could have done last week. Again, future posts, I'll probably change these 2 weeks around a little bit. But basically what's happening is we want to convert our current Express server into an API. How to do that, and what is an API anyway? But before that, let's get into what happened last week. Last week we talked about JWT. What is that? What's happening? How does it work? That kind of thing. We also talked about security considerations in terms of cross-site scripting, error issues, as well as cross-origin resource sharing problems and other things we talked about with security considerations. And we talked about how to do authentication with JWT, what's involved. We create a token. And the token has a few different parts. We have a kind of a header, the payload, the thing that we're passing with the token, and usually it's some kind of user information, as well as the signature. And the tokens are all signed, and the signature tells us a bunch of different things, like when the token expires. So that's what happens last week. We also, during our in-class exercise, we changed up the header to show active links because we wanted to update our site. So when we click onto it, all the active links work. We separated our routers and our controllers. We did that. And then we configured JWT to prepare for this week. Or that's what we did. So what are we doing this week? So far, I got to talk about this week is a little bit weird because we're doing some new stuff. So even the PowerPoint isn't even up on your course shell. It will be by the end of the week. And it's going to be there to help you. A couple of changes we made are, this is going to be our building API server week, as well as how to implement new API endpoints, get and post. We'll talk about that. Making calls to the API server with Postman. We're going to download and install that. There's a download link in your course shell, again, in DC Connect, as well as how later on we're going to be talking about the JavaScript Fetch API, and there's going to be another package called Axios that we're going to be talking about on Friday. So more stuff to come this week. Stuff that's changed and that's due. So in-class exercise 14, which was due Friday, is now moved to Saturday. And Lab 4, which was originally due Friday as well, is now moved to Sunday. So that should give you a couple of days grace to make sure that those things are done. And hopefully you guys are okay with those new dates. Some people get mad when I move dates around, because they're like, but I planned for Lab 4 to be done now, and you moved it like to Sunday. I could have done it differently. I'm sorry. Just trying to make it easier for everyone. So hopefully you don't get too mad. But that's really what is the agenda for this week. But before we start, I'm not going to go into the theory yet. I'm going to cover some of this on Friday. And I need to, because I need to provide some information for our React and a bunch of other stuff that we're going to be doing. So, and I'm working out those details right now. So that's why the PowerPoint's not up, but it will be. All right, let's get into the tech piece, which is what I want to cover first, which is let's build an API server with our existing server. So this week, what we're going to do is for section 3, and I'm going to pull up a new Visual Studio Code window. This week, what I want to do is grab section 3, pull it in there. And for section 3, I want to copy this ICE 13 and make it into ICE 14. Again, if you're coming back from being a bit away, you can always go up online and grab our examples from github.com /Durham Programmer. And we're starting off with section 3's ICEs, right? So that's the one you want. You want to go in there and download that one. because that's the one we're going to be working with. Okay, that's the one. So, and I'll put that up on YouTube as well for those people who are watching on YouTube. That's the one you want to start with. And then we're going to grab number 13 and make a copy of it, and we'll have 14, right? But 14 is going to be slightly different than this one. So if I go back to our code, I want to rename our in-class exercise 13, and I want to call it ICE14-API. So we're going to have two projects this week. One of them is going to be the API backend, and by Friday, I should be able to give you something to start with, an API front end, all right, and or the front end part of your project, right? Now the front end could be anything, okay, just to let you know. It could be Angular, React, it could be your own single page application, Vue, Svelte. There's a bunch of them out there that we've talked about this semester. So any of those could fit in with the back end, but the way they do things is slightly different from one framework to another. So we'll be talking about React, right? So I want to change my package.json so it says ICE14-API. That's the one I want. So I'm changing that too, so we keep up to date. And that now when I have that, I want to, let's make a new PowerShell. Git add dot, and that's kind of adding everything. Git commit -m, and we'll say added project files for in-class exercise 14 API, and then git push. So the API portion is the first part. And again, what we want to do with this one is we want to, kind of configure the API server and how that works. So let's think about this for a second. What we want to do when we're making an API is we don't care about any views anymore. So our server, let me just pull this into here like this. We can see it. We're just focusing on ICE14 API folder. Our server right now, if you look at the configuration for our server, it uses a couple things we may not need anymore. Here's one, our connect flash. Do you think we're going to need our connect flash for as an API? Do you think we need this? What are your thoughts?
No, because we're doing a passport.
Yeah, well, this is connect flash is really just, remember what this works. If I have a login page, and let's just start off by Control-Shift-B. Let's do that. Let's do a watch task here. Here's Control-Shift-B. And let's also, on top of that, let's also do a nodemon. Well, let's do a nodemon. So we can run it. And it's going to connect to our MongoDB Atlas because we're not going to do anything locally today for MongoDB, right? So remember how this works. If I go back out to, if I do localhost 3000, right? Then if I go and try and log in, and if I have an error logging in, right? Then if I press login, that's a submit button. And this little red alert is connect flash. Basically, after it comes back and does a round trip, it makes a trip to the server, comes back, and then pops this stuff into here instead of our login page. But remember, the server, the backend, isn't going to worry about this stuff. It's not going to do this, right? It's going to be React or Angular or Vue that's handling this part. So theoretically, we don't need Flash. We can remove it. We won't do it today. We'll kind of clean up some of the stuff on Friday, but we probably don't need Flash. The other thing is we have 3 different router files. We have an index router, an auth router, and a contactless router. Do I need the index router? What do you think? Well, the index router, if you look through in there, if I look at index router, these are the paths that I have for my index router. My display name, my display home page, my about page. This stuff is all going to be handled by the front end. I'm not going to touch this stuff anymore on the back end. The only routing or endpoints I'm going to offer to the front end from the back end or any data that I pass from the back end to the front end. So we got to consider what's happening here now. We kind of drew this picture last time as well, where I had a couple of different boxes, right? So here's a box. Let's say this box is the back end, and I have another box, right? And let's just choose a different color for that. We'll make it green. And that's the front end. There's the front end, right? So what's happening is the front end can kind of work on its own for a while, right? Like if the front end, when it receives you, right? And here's the back. If the front end has no data requests, it can just do things on its own. It doesn't have to go to the back end at all. The only time it has to go to the back end is if I have to log in. If I have to log in, then clearly I want to make a request to the back end, where the back end is going to make a request to the, let's say the database somewhere over here, and it's going to get a response from the database. And then if the information that's supplied from the front end to the back end is good, then it's going to log you in, right? It's going to produce a token. So some kind of token is going to be made. So here's the token. And this token is going to be passed from the back end to the front end. And when the front end gets the token, right, then what they're going to do is they're going to store that token somewhere. It could be in memory. It could be in local storage or session storage, right? And then now I'm logged in and I have that token. I can use that token. Almost think about something that almost like a pass. I'm holding like this little, I don't know, this little hexagon in my hand. But the idea is that I have almost like I go to the front desk when I go to a building, and to get authorization or to get entry into the building, I have to kind of sign up at the front desk and get a temporary pass. That's what this token is. So I get a temporary pass, and then what's going to happen is if I want to look at pages that require data, then I'm going to take that same token, right? So here's that token again. I'm going to take that same token and I'm going to say, hey, I got this token and I want to get some data. And the server is going to go, oh, you want some data, do you? And you have this token? Cool, let's verify who you are. We'll go back to the database over here where there's a bunch of words. That's the database for now. And it's going to come back, bring back data, and then it's going to basically, return the data. But every time that the front end needs to make a transaction with the back end, it needs to offer up this token again and again. That's how it's going to work. But if I don't need any data, then I can work within the front end and I don't even need the back end. That's how it works. So therefore, I really don't need any of this stuff. This display homepage, about page, it's all content. That can be handled off from the front end. So, and that's the difference. That's where when we talk front end, back end, that's what we mean. The back end is really all around data now, if we're going to do that. So that means that I don't need my index router or my index controller. I don't need those anymore because I'm just data now. And the router and controller don't manage any data. That it doesn't manage any data at all. Okay. So I want you to think of that for a second. So if I go back to the app configuration now, then I can remove this. I don't need the index router. And I can do the same thing on line 110-ish, where the index router here is being used. I don't need to use that anymore. And if I don't need to use the index router, then I can certainly remove the files. So those files, oops, let's not remove the wrong files. Those files there on the routes, they can get removed. Goodbye. And I can certainly do the same thing with the controller. Goodbye for the controller too. Delete. So those are gone, right? We're going to see that this is going to go down in size by Friday. So now that I've done that and I've removed the index router and controller, let's make a push to GitHub. So again, I'm going to make another PowerShell, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say removed index router and controller. We don't need to do that. We don't need those pieces. Those pieces are going to be handled by the front end with my front end framework. Okay, great. So now what I need to do is I want to modify the app configuration so that my app configuration doesn't look like this anymore, right? It's going to use a prefix. This is by convention only. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but it's going to use a prefix starting with API. Okay. And again, if you don't want this, you don't have to do it, but I'm putting it on both of them. So the way it's going to work is if I want to issue some kind of login request, it's going to be /API/login, /API/contact list, /API/add, whatever. Okay, that's how it's going to work. We can also modify the API so that the contact list even has if it even goes one more deeper. It can be /API/contact list. And then if I want to do an add, it's going to be /API/contact list/add. You know, if I really want to do that. The prefix can be whatever you want. Okay, for me, I'm just going to leave it like this. Save, and let's put that up on GitHub. So git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say added API as prefix for routing. Also, what I want to do, I know there's a little pushes, but also what I want to do is in the server.ts file, because we're going to probably have another front end that might use 3000, I'm going to change my port, my default port from my backend to 3500 for now, or some other port. Okay. And it doesn't matter on the front end because, or when I put it up on Heroku, because Heroku is going to assign whatever port it wants anyway. But for testing, we're going to use 3500. So save. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to say git add dot git commit -m, and I'll say changed default port to 3500. Okay. Nice. And that's on the back end. That's on the server.ts file. So server.ts file, changed port. App.ts file, I removed any references to my index router, and we're cooking. We're starting to make changes. Next, let's test it locally. So back here, if I press refresh now, it's going to go, I don't know what's happening. There's nothing, it's not going to compute anymore. It's going to say this site can't be reached anymore. Connection refused. So what happened? Did it die? Like, because that is weird. Like, I'm trying to put in a reference and it's like, it's not even a 404. It's like, it's dead, right? Well, why? Because we're not using 3500. We're using 3000. If I go 3500 and press login, it's going to go error 404 not found, right? Because there is no login anymore. But you know what? This was really cool. This custom error page. It was cool when we were trying to get here and it was a 404 that we didn't know about, right? That was pretty cool. But it's not cool now because none of these links would work anymore. None of them, right? Because all these links are to the wrong places. So which means that remember that in our app.ts at the bottom, we added a custom 404 message where we passed it into our error.ejs page instead of our views folder. But eventually we're not even going to need this. We're not going to have views, right? Because views are only for front end stuff. And we're going to do stuff on the back end. So, but for now, we can change our error.ejs page where we made a custom 404 and just remove the header, please. We don't need the header. That's not going to work anyway, right? So no more header. Heck, you know what? Even the footer is probably useless at this point. If we want to do anything with the error page, we can just keep the error. So we can show that. So if I go save that and I go back out to this and refresh, we're going to just see the error. Okay. And this is good because we're not showing any kind of error stack or anything like that. We don't want that. So again, we can put that up on GitHub. So git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say modified error template to remove header. Git push and footer, but that's fine. All right, so that is the first changes we made just to make it look different. And if I go back here, again, if I type in something like API slash, and if I want to say that I want to look at the contact list, it's going to go, right? Try it out for yourself. So if I go there and I go API slash contact list, right? Like this, it's still going to go error. But why is it going error? It shouldn't go to login, but it does. And we'll talk about why in a second. So let's start by rerouting some of the stuff. Let's go back to routing. Okay, so routing, here's my auth routes. Now, back to questions again. Do we need all of them? Do we need all of these routes when we do authentication? So login, register, do I need all of them? What do you think? I got both display and processing. What do you think, Cooper?
Probably just you don't need the display.
Don't need the display. So we do need the logout. We do need the post register. We don't need the register page display. That's going to handle on the front end. The front end is going to handle that page, right? And like to display the register page. Same thing with login. We don't need to display the login page. That's going to be handled by the front end, right? Whenever that happens. So then we can remove some of these things. And at the top here, you can see that we can get rid of all of these two references, which means that in the controller part, if this is the stuff that we've done on the router, then on the controller piece, which is over here, we can also remove the display functions. We don't need them. So goodbye display functions. And if we get rid of the display functions, well, then we don't need user display name anymore because we're only using user display name for the display functions. So we can get rid of that. Awesome. All right, great. So this is the first piece. And now we get to actually change the controller for process login. So the thing with processing a login page is what we want to do is we want to modify the controller so that it doesn't do any of this. First of all, we're never going to do any flash. So in the error page right here, we can remove the flash reference. We don't need to do flash. Flash is gone. Okay. And then down here where we had an example of what we're going to do, like a front end like React, Angular, or Vue, that's definitely what we want to do. We want to be able to return this. But what about if there's no error? This return redirect is nothing that we want to do anymore, right? The error, if we get an error up there, then we want to respond with JSON. And that's the new way we're going to do it. So how this can look then is instead of a res redirect, let's get rid of this. It's going to be a response with JSON where we pass in some kind of information to the user, that's us, where I want to say, we can put, by the way, we can use whatever we want in here, but I want to use a success Boolean, where I'm going to say success is false. You did not succeed because you know what? There was some kind of errors. And we can say that. We can say with another message object, we can say that error, right? You know, something like authentication error. We don't want to say what it is, but we can say that there is an error. Okay? Authentication error, maybe with an U. How about that? That'd be nice. So that's how we can start. We can start off with saying, hey, you know what? There's an authentication error. You didn't make it, my friend. You failed, right? And we're going to replace anything that has, like, if there's something that I want to return back, if the user doesn't exist, or if there's user errors, because you're logging in with the wrong credentials, that's the error we want to give back. False. Okay, cool. What about if you're good? If you're good, like down here, you're okay, right? You might have an error. This might be a database error, right? But what about if you're good, like down here? Well, we don't want to do this anymore. So res redirects, we don't want to redirect. That's something that's going to happen on the front end. The only people that are going to move us around from page to page is not the back end. It's going to be the front end. The back end is only responsible for data. So what we want to do is something like this, where we say response.json. We want to pass in our success Boolean to true. We want to say that the message is that the user logged in successfully. That's okay. And we could pass in just the user data like this and the token, which we just generated. We generated a token, and the token that's been generated, remember how we did that? Go to definition. We're using our util method that creates a payload for us that includes the user ID, the user display name, email address, and all this stuff. This is what we have here, right? And it also times us out. This is time in seconds, not time in milliseconds. Time in seconds for about a week. That's how long it expires in processes. We we use a JWT sign method to sign the token, right, with a session secret as well as other information. And then we return the token that we get back out in a string from the generate token method. And that comes right here. So we can take that auth token and also return that to the user, which is good. But you know what? It might be best if we sanitize the actual user object, right? So we got the user object here and we sanitize it in our generate token, but I want to sanitize my user object a little bit differently. So what I can do is I can actually do it right here. I can say that, hey, I want to sanitize my user. I want it to make it look like that, that thing we got up here, this part. This is what I want my user to look like. So I want to grab this piece. Okay, I'm just going to put it out there, see what you think, and put that in there. That's what I want my user to be. My user is going to be an ID, a display name, an email address, and a lowercase username. And why do I want to sanitize them? Because I don't want this. I don't want user.id, right? I don't want that. And if I change one, I got to change them all. So that's how it goes. So yeah, you sit there for a week, but we're not going to make it a week. That's just a starter. That's just a test. We're going to make it so it's much less than that. We don't want the token to only be expired in a week. We want to make it expired as soon as you're logged out or within a reasonable time frame, like an hour. Okay. So this is pretty cool. So we, we've created our response, a JSON response for both failure and success. That's what we've done here. Okay, failure and success. And let's keep going. Let's see how this one looks like. So what about this one? So we don't care about showing the new user. That's not required anymore. But look, request flash, that's useless. So we're not going to show this anymore. Request flash is gone. And same thing goes with this request flash here. We don't want that anymore. But we have a couple of messages that we could kind of display, right? A couple of messages. One of them is that there is definitely a problem here with, registration. So user registration would have failed here. And again, we can do is instead of response redirect, we can just say response.json, where we pass in the success object, which is going to be false. So the success is false. We can say that the message is that, registration failed, right? Registration failed. And that registration failed is definitely an error. So we want to specify that as so. This, by the way, is for us, right? So we can say that registration failed. It didn't work, right? It would be really great if we could do some kind of redirect, but this isn't going to work either, by the way. Okay. And the reason why this can't work is because we're redirecting the user to the contact list and logging them in. We can't do that, but the front end can. So what we want to do is when we're logging in or registering, right, what we want to do is we want to give the front end a chance to do the redirection, not us. So let's just comment this out for now. So again, I'm just going to do a block comment here. And what we want to do is the same kind of idea. We want to do a return res.json if all thing goes well, where we pass in a success of true. We made it no space here. That's very bad. Very bad form, Tom. Very bad form. We should put a space right there. A success that's true and a message that is something like user registered successfully. And registered, if I can spell properly, and I cannot. And so that is a message that we're going to get. We could also send back information as well. We can say new user is the thing that we want to send out. We can say, what's that user that just got registered? Well, it's the new user. That's the new user that's been registered. Okay. And the new user does not include the password. It includes username, email address, and display name. Okay, that's what it's going to be pumping out there. So we can actually push back to this is for us. Like we can send back to us anything we want. Okay. And so it's important for us to give us very kind of important information about when we register and what we get back. We can check to see what we're doing in the form. And this is kind of messaging that we want to do from the back end to the front end. So response.json replaces res redirects and res renders. There's no res rendering anymore because we're not drawing anything. We're not putting anything together. How about logout? So logout is very similar to, I don't need a return for this one because it's a get statement. I'm going to do a response JSON, right, where we say user logged out successfully, okay? And we can say, if you really want to, we don't have a user information that logged out. We don't know who that is, but we could, kind of grab the user from the request.user. We could do that. If the request user is there, we could grab that. But the problem is if we do logout first, and then we try and get the user, there's no user. So it'd be nice idea, but we can't do this. So we can say success true message is user logged out successfully. So why are these messages? Like, one of the questions I always get is like, Tom, you get all these messages happening, but why? Well, we'll see in a second. Bear with me. So this is the first part. This is the auth controller and the auth routes. They've been modified to support API. So that's what we're going to put in here. We're going to say git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say modified auth route and controller to support API. Git push. All right, good. So now we're responding with data. This is the most important thing. We don't have any place that we're not responding with data. A couple of additional things we can do. If I click on any of the functions now, as we're cleaning up, we can click on Visual Studio Code, gives us some options to refactor, like convert to arrow functions. I think this is a key thing to do, converting to arrow functions. So let's do that. Any place we see a function that's not the actual function itself, we can go through and just convert them to arrow functions. There's probably a couple of them that we have here that we can use, like this one here. So that one can be converted to an arrow function, right? So to make it a little bit more efficient and more modern. Okay, so save. And that's the a couple of things we've done here. So you got a bunch of returns. We're going to return res.json, return next error, right, as an example, and we return res.json if we're all good to go. Okay, next, now that we've done all of this and we're ready to go to the next one, let's do the let's go and change the contact list route and the contact list controller. So the contact list route, we were using AuthGuard before, remember? Can't use AuthGuard anymore because AuthGuard, if we go back to my index, it does a res redirect. We can't do this. We need to send a message, as an example, and this AuthGuard isn't going to stop anything from happening. So we can't use AuthGuard anymore. We need to use something else to prevent access. So if I go back to my contact list for now, let's just get rid of it. So no AuthGuard anymore. AuthGuard, by the way, is a lot of times handled by the front end when it comes to, some redirection. It can do a lot of the redirection from the front end as well. The back end just helps because it creates a guard service, right? So that way it doesn't do this. And because we don't need AuthGuard, we can get rid of the reference here. To test what we have so far that it's not guarded, then what I can do is if I go to the page, right, and if I type in something like API / and if I do contact list, right now it's going to show me the page, right? And well, we got this thing that says Sam, right? Let's delete that. Let's delete that and let's add our own in there. So if I click delete, it gives me an error. It says, well, you can't really delete anymore because the delete is API / delete. So right now we can do it. We can go API delete and it's going to redirect me to my contact list page. All the redirection is terrible, right? We got to kind of look at it. So there's no more. Same thing with my add. Add won't work because it's not add anymore. It's API / add. It's almost like on purpose that we've done this, right? And the same thing goes with this. If I try and add a new contact here, well, it's not going to work, right? Because if I put in something like Peter Parker, and if I do, well, I can try anyway. 416, let's just add one in. And then Spider-Man at example.com. Let's just do that and click add. It's going to redirect us back to my contact list, and that's no good. It has to be API/contact list, and there's Peter Parker. Yes, that works. It's just that we don't want to have views here at all. We want to actually show the contact list in JSON format. So back to the drawing board. We can do this without logging in, number one. Two, in our contact list, we don't want to have anything that does any kind of res rendering. So any res rendering in our contact lists, it got to go kind of thing, right? So the way we're going to do that is respond with JSON data. Let's do that. So we'll get rid of this. And we'll say, when we want to display the contact list from now on, it's going to be response.json, where we want to pass in a success object, which we're going to say, hey, if you got here, by the way, all these are going to be true. We want to make a little message that says something like contact page, choose a single quote, contact page displayed successfully, right? Followed by some information we want to pass. For example, the contacts list, which is the contact list right here. Okay, I want to show that. I want to send that back to the front end so they can do something with the contact list. This is data, right? As well as let's show the user when they're logged in, which is the request.user. That we will be able to show. So that is my request JSON. Okay. What about for the display ad page? There's nothing that I'm doing in the display ad page, and you might think, well, you might not need it, Tom, but kind of I do, because it's going to show me the ad page. This is kind of a thing where the only reason why I want to show anything here or have any kind of response is just to show that I'm successfully logged in and showing the ad page. So again, I'm just going to copy paste this one. So we're going to say that res render, it's not going to be res render, it's going to be res JSON, success is true, and we're going to say ad page displayed successfully. We don't need any of this, but we do maybe want to have the user object displayed. I want to display the user object every time. Who is that user that's going to my ad page? Okay, and I'm going to use this format over and over again. So I'm going to grab this, copy it, and now how about this piece, res render? Well, res render. Let's just grab those two lines actually. And we're going to say that, okay, success is true, and the edit page is displayed successfully. We want the user, but we also want that contact to edit. So we're going to say something like contact is equal to contact to edit. Now again, I'm doing this. There's no format or requirement to send anything else back but just success true. Some kind of notification that lets the user, the server know on the front end that things are okay. You'll see, Cooper. These messages are for us for troubleshooting. Okay. So that's good. But success true is the one thing you need. So think about the front end. The front end is going to receive a message that says, hey, here's my success, but my response JSON is a payload. I'm sending this whole payload to the front end. The front end is going to consume this payload and do something with it through some kind of service. All right, cool. So I add page, edit page. I've got my res JSON, and then my process page. Okay, process page is kind of the same. So instead of res redirecting, I don't want to res redirect anywhere. I want to, if my process add page, I'm going to say add page processed. And you can also say, instead of add page, you can say add contact or contact added. You can say contact added successfully, because that's what we just did. Contact added successfully. That's what we kind of did, right? And then again, I want my user who added the contact, and I can also get my contact. What contact was added? Okay, so that's what information I want to pass to the front end. Cool. And we process the add page. Let's process the edit page. So the edit page is going to be processed right down here. It's going to redirect it. So we're going to do that. So we're going to say res JSON success true, and then contact edited successfully. Contact edited successfully. We know that we want the user who did it as well as the contact that was edited. Okay, that's the updated contact information. By the way, if you really want to, you can always get the original contact too, right? Whatever the original contact was, you can look them up with your ID, and then you can replace it. Okay, so you can have both the original and the new one, right? It's up to you what you want to do here. But you can always pull the database twice if you want, no problem. All right, so that is success true message, whatever it is, and then some information that's going to be passed back to the front end. Okay. And finally, the delete page, very similar. We're just going to say success is true and contact successfully deleted. Contact deleted successfully, where we want to have that contact that we deleted, contact ID, with whatever the contact was. So we're going to say that that is the ID of the contact that got deleted, because we only have the ID information. We don't have the whole contact information. We don't have that. We just have the ID of the contact that's being removed. I'm just removing some of the comments to prevent bloating. Okay, so that's like res JSON. So that's everything we want from our response. Now they're all responses. If I go back to just to test it before we push it up on GitHub, if I go back to here and refresh, you're going to see that it gives me the contact list in JSON format, right? But it doesn't give me the user information because there is no user. I'm not logged in. Okay. And that's what the contact will look like. But we don't want this to be, to be clear text like this, right? So we want to secure this, and that's the next step. So first, let's put this up on GitHub. So we're going to say git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say modified contact list to contact list routes and controller to support API. Git push. There we go. So that's all done. We did all that. And finally, once we've done that part, then, well, that's the first piece, right? The first piece is we've created all of our endpoints, right? But they're not secure right now. We can look at these for as long as we want. And that's a problem, right? We don't want that to happen. We want the site to be locked down. And we're going to do that. And the way we're going to do that is by using something called Postman. So what I want you to do now is I want you to download a tool called Postman. And now this is going to answer your question, Cooper, because Postman is interesting in that it's going to give us a chance to, have the API feel like we're doing post and get and post requests from a form. We're not using a form, we're using an actual application to do that. So please download and install Postman. And what I'd also ask you to do is sign up, because one part of this in-class exercise is for you to sign up for Postman as well. Okay, because you need to use this. So a great thing about this is I like using, first of all, I much prefer using the Postman app compared to the Postman API that's part of the web page. I think a separate app is by far easier to use for me. But you could, if you wanted to use the web page version, you could. I'm not using the web page version. I'm just using Postman here. The web page version, if you actually click on it, it looks very similar, right? Like so. Again, you have to be logged in order for you to use it, and I am. And you can see that the workplaces I created today are even available here on the website. But I'm going to use the the actual app itself. So let me know, Cooper and Anna, if you guys have successfully, kind of registered and downloaded and installed the app. Please let me know. We'll continue. And again, for those people who are watching online, please download the Postman app. I think it's a good app to have. You're good? So you've already downloaded. It's working for you, Cooper? If it is, then it'll look like this. If I launch the app for Postman, it looks like this. And what I want to do is I want to make a brand new section. So I want to go into Workspaces here. So if you look at Home kind of gives you this kind of look and feel, right? There's an upgrade button that upgrades for money if you want to pay money to Postman to have a kind of a team API development. We don't need that. We're just using it for our own personal use. So we're going to go into Workspaces, and I'm going to add a new workspace, create a workspace. And we're going to make this workspace, we're going to call it, I'm going to call it WEBD6201 in the winter 2022. And it's going to be for section 3. You guys are section 3. I'm going to make it so my visibility is public, and I'm going to click Create Workspace. And the reason why I want to do this is because it gives me a good starting point where I can kind of have this area here where I can add in requests and responses and delete and kind of posts. I can do post requests and get requests in here. All right, so this is the first piece. So what I want to do now, let's take a look at that. Let's make sure you're here. You can see that your API contact list is here. And I should be able to do the same thing. If I grab this link from the API contact list that we were just using with localhost 3500, and if I make a brand new request, let's just click this plus button, and I'm making a get request, right? And if I kind of pop in that link, localhost 3500, and if I click send, then you're going to see the same results, but it's in a nicer view. There it is. So true, message, and to answer your question now, Cooper, this is where we need it. This is our troubleshooting. Our troubleshooting is we're getting information about what's happening, right? This is for us. So we're actually reading the API data. Okay, this is beautiful. So now that we've got this, we want to block it. We don't want anyone to come in here and use this thing, right? We want to be the V that's been created by whenever we create an object, then this is automatically created by the creation process, so that our API does that. All right, so this is good. We've created our object. That's awesome, right? And what we want to do here is I want to secure this. I don't want to be able to see this site anymore. So before we use AuthGuard, right? But now we can't use AuthGuard anymore, right? So how do we do that without AuthGuard? Well, it's slightly different. So we want to go back to our contact list route. And this is where we had our AuthGuard before, remember? So I want to use something else. And for that, I'm going to start off with passports. I'm going to say import passport from passport. And what I want to put in is a new thing. It's going to look like this. I'm going to say passport.authenticate. And my strategy is going to be, I'm going to use JWT as my strategy. I'm also going to pass in a option for my, and which is going to be my session option, which is going to be false. I'm going to say that session option, we're not going to use sessions. And that little line is the thing that's going to stop us from, kind of viewing my display contact list page. So notice that in Authenticate, it tells me a bunch of stuff that I can do. And so that's what the JWT option does. Session, it says it's a Boolean, again, that I can use, right? So that's what passport session is. There's a lot of different ones. We're going to look at this in a second to talk about how you can authenticate with different options. So that's the first thing. So let's just hide one site. So this is the contact list. Let's not do these ones. Let's just prove that this works. So save this and go back out to our page. And if I press refresh now, it should say unauthorized. And I can do the same thing if I look at our Postman, and if I go send, it's going to say unauthorized. All right, that's what we want. So unauthorized means can't access it, you're not logged in. Okay, are you with me? Check mark if you're with me, guys. Awesome. Excellent. Okay, that's great. So now that I've logged in or I haven't logged in, I'm trying to access it and I'm broken. How about if, I mean, this is a nice idea to protect each link. If I imagine I have to put passport authenticate for each link, and this is a link by link guard. I can guard any link to make sure that I'm logged in before I access it. Cool. But there's a better way. If I want to kind of protect an entire domain, subdomain, which is kind of what this is, right? I don't have to do it here at the router level. I can actually do it at the configuration level. So if I go back to my config app.ts and go scroll all the way down to where I have my when I connect my router middleware right here for my contact list, I can pop this in here instead. And what this will do, similar to what we did on the other side, what this will do is it will protect the entire subdomain. So this whole subdomain for my contact list router, which is the entire file, if I'm not logged in, I won't even be able to read the file. It will just basically return unauthorized. And I can do that for any aspect of my site where I protect the entire file, all the routes, which makes sense, all the routes inside of my contact list. So why is this really great? Imagine if I didn't just have those routes. Let's go to my contact list. Maybe I don't have these many routes. Maybe I have a lot more. Maybe I have a bunch of other things, a dashboard. Maybe I have some other things where I construct a contact. I have more data, a profile for the contact where I want a profile image, and a bunch of other stuff that I can do with the contact. Maybe there's a bunch of many more links than this, as an example. It would be really tedious if I had to go through it one link at a time and protect them all. Sometimes you need this, like for example, in your authentication. I might have, when I log in, I have a profile page. I have a little profile object that I can come in. I can click on the profile and it'll take me to my profile page, as an example. But I shouldn't be able to get to my profile page if I'm not logged in. So that one I can protect. But my login and register, I won't protect. So I can protect single sites, single links, as well as the entire page. Let's see if that entire page thing works. So again, I made the change here at the app config level. Let's save it. And actually, let's do one thing first. Let's remove it first. Save it, put it back, but don't save it. And if I go back here, you can see that if I try and access it with Postman, I get everything. But as soon as I save it here and I go back to Postman again and I send it, it's going to say unauthorized. So you can protect that entire area. So that's pretty good. So why Postman? Why even bother with this thing? Why not just get the front end done now? Because remember what we want to do, guys. When we make the back end turn into an API, what I want to do is I want to test the back end thoroughly, so we know the API is functioning properly, and so it's not a problem with the back end anymore. It's a problem with the front end. If we have a problem, it's all front end stuff. This is a good way of isolating the issues, because if I start working both front end and back end and I don't verify the back end is working, I'm going to have all these errors that pop up, and I'm going to go, wait, is it my back end or my front end? Which one has the problem, right? I want to, kind of remove my back end as an issue. That's what I'm doing right now. So I want to verify every API endpoint, and API endpoints look like this: HTTP, whatever the IP address is, or hostname /API, and then the name of the link you want. That's the endpoint when we talk about endpoints. Okay, very cool. So I have this really cool thing, API contact list. And what I want to do now is I want to be able to log in. Let's do that part. And by the way, if I go over here, you can still see I'm unauthorized. I can't get in there. All right, cool. So how do I log in? So let's try to do a post request. So I'm going to click on plus. And I want to change this request from a get to a post. And in the URL request, let's just copy this for now to start. So I don't have to type too much. and go in here with the URL, and we can replace the URL with a login. So I want to log in, and my key is my username, which I can put in admin, and my password is the other key where I can put in 123456 because that's the password we just chose to do for testing. Okay, so that's how you would do it. And then if I click on send, it's going to do a post request with this information. Let's try it. Send. And notice I logged in, and there it is. I got my success true, user logged in, I did it admin, and this is my username and password, all the information that I used, as well as the bearer token. This is the token. Okay, cool. Well, that means I should log in, right? If I press refresh. Wait, how come I'm not logging in here? I can't log in still. Cooper, what's wrong? I can't do it, man.
Postman logged in too, right?
Postman is a different app. That's definitely true. Okay, well then I should be able to do this, right? Be able to go here and press send and log in, and it's unauthorized. How come I can't do it here, but I logged in here? Well, the reason why is because when you log in under authorization, notice authorization here, you can specify a bearer token. So here it says type is inherit, but we don't want that. We want to use a bearer token, this one, and we want to take the information that we got from our login, which is this token right here, copy this, and we want to go to our place over here and populate that in there. So that's the bearer token. And now when I go in there with that bearer token and press send, you're going to see that I'm logged in and I'm good. And that's the one, kind of contact we have right now in our database. Okay, so that is how we do it. The bearer token is what we talked about before. This idea of, okay, I've got my server, my backend, and I have you. You've requested a token. I generated a token for you. It's signed. It expires in right now a week. That's how long it takes. And then I give it to you. So I'm, again, I have this token. I give it to you, and now that you have this token, you can unlock all of the quote unquote doors or web links that are secure on my site, according to your authorization level, of course, if we're using role-based authentication, which is what we should be doing. All right, but for now, if we think about this, if I use that token, I can access any one of the sites. So this is the first thing we checked. We checked to see if we can access our display list or our contact list, and we can. Awesome. All right, well, what about registration? I want to register another name. Remember, I want to check out every API endpoint right now. That's important to do. Were the keys in the post just the names of the form inputs? Yeah, for now they are. But we'll go back and talk about this. I want to make another name. I want to register now. I logged in. I want to register. Registration is also a post request. I'm going to grab that link here. And I'm going to go into the plus and make another post request. Let's do this together. And I'm going to populate this thing. And instead of login, I want to say register. Okay. When I register, though, right, I want to register and I want to put in, and by the way, you'd be forgiven to think that this is how it would work. This is not how it's going to work. I'm going to tell you right now it's going to fail, right? So this is how it works. If I put in the username, that's the first part. And let's make a new username. We'll say Peter Smith. That's the new user. And our password, we can put it in as 123456. There's our password. We also need a first name. That was something that we had in there. So that was Peter. And our last name, lowercase n, lowercase l, Peter Smith, as well as an email address, which is like peter.smith@example.com. So that's the information we would normally want, right? And that's kind of what we would fill into the form if we were to submit a form to log in. We were going to do a post request. If I click send, we should be able to register, right? Wrong. It's false. Why? Because if I look back at what's happening on Nodemon says missing username error. Huh? What? I gave my username. It's right here, isn't it? That's my username, Peter Smith. Yep, you did. But unfortunately, for when we're using Postman, we can't do it as query parameters here. Query parameters are something that happens up here in the query, right? And although it worked for login, it doesn't work for registration or any other form. What we have to do instead of this is let's just do a bulk edit, please, on the right. Under bulk edit, you're going to have all the details here where the property is separated by the value with a colon, and each property is separated by a new space. So I'm going to grab all this. I'm going to cut it out. So Control X to cut. And instead of doing it in params, I want to head over to body. And I could try the form body, going to bulk edit and paste it in there, right? And if I tried it in the form data and I press send, you're going to see again it failed. Same reason, right? But if I take it out of here and put it into XWWW form URL encoded, well, that makes sense actually. If I put it in there, do a bulk edit and paste all that data and then click send, well, now it's going to be true. It's almost like we entered the form properly finally. And we have this new user, Peter Smith, with a new username, as well as a brand new password hash. That's what it looks like. And that's been entered right up on the database. So all good. Excellent. Well, now that we did that, we kind of logged in that way, right? As an example, we logged in, that's logging in, and we logged in as admin. Notice that when we logged in as admin, it knows who we are, and it also gave us a specific token. Well, we can also log in now as Peter Smith. So Peter Smith. By the way, if I do Peter like this and press send, it's going to give us false. So it doesn't work. So it says, it's going to give us a false response. If I go do Peter Smith and click send, now it logs us in and it gives us a brand new token for us to use. Right, that's our Peter Smith token. Notice though that if I go back to the original one, this one, right, and it was the admin that logged in. If I click send again, the admin is still logged in and is still be able to use their token, which is inside of here, inside of the bearer token area. That's the admin token. If I swap it out, this one, if I swap it out with the one I just got from Peter Smith, which is right here, if I take this one, copy that one and go back to this thing here, right here, which is the first request we made for the contact list, and put that over here, paste it in there, a new token, and press send. And now it somehow knows that it's Peter Smith that's here. Why is that? Because the payload, remember there's three parts of the token we talked about. The first part is the header, the second part is the payload, and the third part is the signature. So the signature tells us how when the token expires, and it has other information. And the payload though is the user information. All right, that's the payload information, which is what we want. Nothing happened to the logged in user. There is no logged in user. Remember, what we have is a token that's been created. The login process is partly handled by the back end, but there's another part that's handled by the front end. We have to make sure that you understand that. So I've given you a token, right? That token is going to be used to sign and get into different secure areas of my site. But if you have access to the other token, any valid token, you can somehow become a user. So this is an issue where you have I'm going to almost like a forged identity. I can get that token somehow. If I have access to it, then I can use it to log in. Now, getting the token is really hard. Okay, it's not like easy to do, right? The admin token is not something that's easy to get. But however, how does the token get handled on the front end? If I get the token from the back end, what do I do with it? Do I take that token and put it in local storage or session storage? Well, then it's going to be on my computer forever. Once I go to that site, my token is going to show up there in local storage or in session storage. So on the front end, you need to do some management of that. Like when I press the logout, it's not going to log me out. I mean, it's not going to kill my token. The only thing the logout's going to do is going to say, you've been logged out, and it'll tell the front end that you need to do something now because the logout process is in play. You can log out, remove that user, the token from the user in local storage or session storage or wherever you're keeping it or memory, you know. But we've been able to successfully do a registration and, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's the second, you know, kind of the three things we've done so far. Okay, what about, let's edit a user, right? So I want to edit Peter Parker. I want to change the contact number from 555 to 5550. Okay, let's do that. So again, the way to do that is we want to, let's grab this part, contact list, right? And let's go to here, right? And put that in. And let's first add a new user. How about that? Let's add a new user. And for adding, well, what happens if I go to the add page? Here's my add page. If I don't put the authorization in there, then I should be blocked. So send, it should be unauthorized, right? But if I put the authorization information in there, if I change this to bearer token, which remembers my bearer token for now, if I click send, then it's going to say, yeah, it's cool. The ad page was displayed correctly, and it's Peter Smith that is going there. That's the user that's in there. Okay, as an example. Cool. I like it. All right, good. So that's how we can add. How about if I want to do an edit, right? I want to add a new user, but instead of adding it with a GET request, I want to add it with a POST request. Okay, well, for the POST request, for me to add a new user, a new contact, I need to go to the body. It's like we did before. I need to go to the form URL encoded, and let's add that new form in there. So again, just like before, we have a display name, lowercase d, which is our new name. So Bruce Banner, let's say. And our contact number, so 416-555-5552. And our email address, which is the Hulk at example.com. That's the way we can add a new user. We did it properly. Those three pieces of information. And if I click send, then we have a new user that's been added. The Hulk has been added in there. You can see that that worked okay, right? But am I missing something? It says contact number, email address, and what happened to display name? What happened to the other piece, which was my, you know, my, it's not, is it display name or full name? What is it? Right. Well, let's take a look. If I go back to the original one, you can see here that I have full name, not display name. And if I refresh now, you're going to see that I have one that's broken. Let's do an edit on this one. So the way to do the edit, right? When we add it, it's okay. That was the add. We didn't add it correctly. This should be full name. This should be this key should be a full name key. Full name. We're not going to do that yet. And we're also going to do a bulk edit. And let's add another one. Instead of Bruce Banner, let's add in Dr. Stephen Strange. This is a great thing about Postman. You can really rapidly add data too, right? And let's change this to Dr. Strange. So new user, our new contact, yay. And oh wow, so that was that didn't look like it worked either. Look, even that one didn't work because I got Dr. Strange, but I didn't get the full name happening somehow. The full name failed. That's interesting, right? Oh yeah. So capital F. Yeah, capital F. So we'll modify those. And we'll do the last one, which is, you know, we'll do the other one, which is Steve Rogers. Put him as a 3. Doesn't matter. We got a couple to fix, which is no problem. And we'll go here and we'll say Captain America. You can see how quickly this works, right? And say it, send. And now, hey, there it is, Steve Rogers. We know that things are good. Okay, excellent. So now, how do we edit it? Well, let's grab this one. So this link. And I want to go to a, in here, how do I see the link? How do I see the user that I want to edit, right? Well, what I would do is I wanted to edit / and then the ID of the user. So if I go back to here where we have our list and I press send, you can see that I have a couple of users that I want to update. I want to update this one first. So I want to grab this one. This is the Hulk, right? And I want to go to that last thing we did right here and kind of put that in there. I need to, if I just did this right now, it's going to go unauthorized. But if I go to authorization and change that to bearer token, and if I go send just by like this, it's going to say, hey, I displayed my user page. So the display page for displaying the edit page works fine. Okay. And notice I got back the contact that I'm going to update. That's what would populate inside that page when I display the edit page. But what I want to do is actually do a post request. There's my post request. And in my body, I want to go into this part, into the thing that I want to change, right? Let's do a bulk edit, right? And let's grab that information. Now remember, it's contact number, full name, contact number, email address separated by colons. So full name, right? Again, this would be Bruce Banner. No spaces. Bruce Banner. Contact number. We can modify it all, but just to prove out that it's just one thing, 416-555-5552, and email address, which is the Hulk. And make that lowercase at example.com. Okay, and then if I click send, this will be the update. Hey, look at that. And we actually updated it here. It showed us our new contact, which is what we wanted. Let's do the same thing with Dr. Strange. So again, but we need another, we can't use the same ID. So we're going to have to go back and get that ID for Dr. Strange, which is this one. So that's how it works in our API works, right? And if I go back to here and put that over here, there it is. Then I can change this to Dr. Strange. So I'll say Dr. Stephen Strange, right? And we'll say that that is 416-555-5553. I don't know. And that'll be Dr. Strange. Add examples, make that actually 6, just because I like 666. I don't know for Dr. Strange, who knows? And there we go. And then if I click send, then he's been modified. There it is. There's Dr. Strange, right? So now if I go back to my original, these errors we made, and I press send, we can see that that has all been corrected, but it's in weird order. Take a look at that. How the order is changed because there wasn't a full name before, but now there is. It doesn't really matter. It's going to read up the same way as it did before. One place to check this is up online. And if we had access to the actual site, we could do that. But you can see here we have a bunch of them. So we have edit, add. We have both display and post. We can add a contact. We can edit a contact. What about delete? Well, delete is very much like edit. So if I go back to edit, this is my edit. I want to delete something, so I'm going to copy that. Have another little plus here. Go to, instead of get, it's going to be a get request, and we're going to put the information up here, right? But if I'm unauthorized, and if I click send, it's going to say unauthorized. So I got to go back and change my bearer token so I can use that. And now let's make sure I get rid of the right one. So let's go back to the one I want to get rid of. And let's say, for example, I really don't like, I don't know, the first one we added in, which was Bruce Banner. Let's get rid of Bruce Banner. So I want to get rid of this one. So I want to grab this link and go back to the delete and change this from edit to delete, right? And change this link. And then if I click send, then it's going to say true, contact deleted successfully, and it's going to give me the ID of the contact that I deleted. Yeah, that's the ID of the contact right there. And you can see that sure enough, it was that contact. Okay. And so now we've done mostly all CRUD operations. And we're doing this again to verify that our API is working exactly as it should. And we're doing this with 0 front end right now. So our front end is non-functional. All we're using this is for just to verify that the back end is working. And it's like I said, guys, I cannot urge you how, how I can insist to you how urgent and how important this thing is to do. Because if you don't verify the back end and you start building a front end, and then you're like, I can't access data, or I'm the data is not working. It's not your back end. It's the way you've configured your front end. You've isolated that problem, right? Which is huge. Trust me. All right, next is the last part, which is we've deleted. We can get rid of stuff. If I go back to here and if I refresh, you can see that Bruce Banner will be gone. Let's take a look. So Bruce Banner no longer there. What about logging out? What about logging out? So how does that work? So again, I can go in here and I just put in that login request. There's my my login. Let's just use the opposite of login. We'll just do a logout. So way over here. Actually, there's two untitled ones. And we'll do is a get request. So I want to do a logout. Here's my logout. And I don't have to be authorized for the logout request, do I? Because it doesn't really tell you if I log out, anyone can log out, right? If they're logged in. So if I click log out and click send, then it should just go, yay, it's true. What does this give us? Does this give us any valuable information? So this doesn't have to do with validation because yes, we validate on the front end. Absolutely. Yeah, so this gives us no valuable information. That's what this does. All it does, I'm just letting you know, is it sends a message to the front end that basically says, log them out. Someone's clicked the logout button. And on the back end, we've logged out. Who are we logging out? We don't know because we can't delete, tokens. Let's talk about this for a second, what I'm talking about here. Let's inspect what we're really doing here, okay? So back to the building blocks here. Let's go back to my util. So in my util folder in the index file, we can see what happens when we generate a token. We have our payload, and we have this thing called JWT options, which is expires in, which gives us a number of seconds, time in seconds, which works out to be about a week, okay? JWT sign, if I look over there, it says synchronously sign the given payload into a Json Web Token string payload. Payload to sign can be a literal, a buffer, or a string or private key, either secret for HMAC algorithms or PM encoded private key for RSA, and so on. That's what this signing does, okay? And there's two parts. There's the payload, there's the session secret, as well as the JWT options. And this thing here creates the token. The token, once I have it, I use it as a key to unlock the doors of my website. When I say the doors, it's almost like I lock each of the sites that I have access to. It gives me authorization to do whatever authorization I've given myself to do, right? Remember, there's a difference between authentication and authorization. It authenticates me. It tells you this is Tom, or whoever the user is that's logged in, Peter Smith in this case, right? But when I log out, there is no JWT sign out. There's nothing like that. Let me give you that example. So if I type in JWT, here are the things that I can do. I can sign, I can verify, and I can decode. It says returns the decoded payload without verifying if the signature is valid. Verify, right? Synchronously verify given token using a secret or a public key to get decoded token. The token is a JWT string to verify secret or public key. All right, so that is verify. And remember, what we did was we signed the token here when we log in, and then in my app.ts, right, my app.ts, where my JWT comes into play, right, I find the user by ID, right, my JWT payload. I have a JWT options, right, where I want to use the auth header as bearer token. That's why I've been looking at bearer token the entire time. And that's my strategy. Okay, cool. So I've got my token and everything else, but there's nothing really that tells me that I should log out my token. Let's take a look at that a little bit and just kind of do a little bit of digging. So if I look at Json Web Token, and that's like here, I'm going to give you that link. This is the Json Web Token. And Json Web Token also passed that link to the people on YouTube there. So Json Web Token. Okay, let's take a look at this for a second. So it says I installed it, and what it does was we have a method that says expires in. That's part of the when you do a JWT sign, right? It says I want to get my payload. We know what that is. That's the information for the user. Secret or private key. That's up to us. We use session secret, right? And some kind of options and possible callback, right? So it says asynchronous. If a callback is supplied, the callback is called with the error or the JWT. All right, that's asynchronous. Synchronous returns the JSON Web Token as a string, okay, which is what we're doing. Payload could be an object, literal, buffer, or string. And basically what's happening is the expires in allows us to use a numeric value, which is a number of seconds, how many seconds it expires, how many days, how many hours, and so on. We can do something like this. Or in quotations, I can put another number of milliseconds that have expired. Okay, that's one of the options. Not before is expressed in seconds, and it says a numeric value is interpreted as seconds, la la la. So not before a certain point in time. Audience, issuer, JWT ID, subject, no timestamp, header, key ID, mutate payload, and those are the options. And it kind of looks like this, like we've shown you before. Okay, cool. So that's your JWT signing. Then I have another piece where I verify. So if a callback is supplied, function acts asynchronously, and you give it some options when you verify who it is, and you can verify the signature is correct if you really wanted to. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. I'm going through this because I want to show you. Then there's decode. Returns the decoded payload without verifying if the signature is valid. And there's some errors and codes that you can get with verify. Okay, what those things mean. And that's it. There is no, it says, first of all, we recommend you to think carefully if auto-refreshing a JWT will not introduce any vulnerability in your system. We are not comfortable including this in part of the library. However, you can take a look at this example to show how this can be accomplished apart from the example that there is an issue and a pull request. That's it. There is no, we just got rid of, we canceled our token. There's nothing like that. Let's take a look though at this example where it kind of shows us an example of a token generator. All right, so it signs and there's a refresh where it says, I want to delete the payload. I verify what the payload, the current payload, I delete, parts of it and I put it back and I regenerate it, and they say it could cause vulnerabilities. And I totally agree with that. And so what we have to figure out is how the token is being used. It's nothing that these guys at OAuth or Auth kind of put together. The other one we can also look at is Passport, because we use Passport -JWT. Passport JWT, right, if you notice, it is another service that we've been using, and it creates a strategy for us as well. So it talks about the issuer and a bunch of other stuff here. Pass request to callback, JSON Web Token options, right, which we can have in here, and it talks about other things like the payload and a bunch of stuff. Okay, but more or less, there's nothing in here that tells you that when you log out, that your token is destroyed. The token is there pretty much forever. Well, as long as it doesn't expire anyway, right? So that's an issue. And that means that we have to deal with this issue on the front end. Okay, one more thing. The other one that we were using is a passport. We want to look at the passport. So if I look at Passport.js, Passport.js also has a JWT strategy, right? So if I go here and if I look at JWT, there's Passport JWT, which is what we used. That's a strategy, an OAuth strategy. So it gives us, an idea of how this works, right? And it's exactly the same code we saw earlier on their site. But that is a strategy that we can use in terms of how we can authenticate. There's the authenticate request we use, passport authenticate. Right? Remember that? We did that there, but we didn't really log out. It didn't do that for us. Okay? Just putting it out there for you. So that means that that is something that is not handled, and we need to handle it ourselves. So when the token expires, then it doesn't allow us to, it's like a key that's broken. We can't open the doors anymore to our site, right? The only time that we can go from one link to the other is if the token is valid and signed, right? And that means if I go to, let's try this out. So if I go back to my little site here, and let's suppose that in the util index.ts, let's change this. Instead of it working for a week, let's make it work for 1 second. Okay, so in 1 second, it's going to expire. So we'll go there, right? And I'm going to go back to Postman, and going back to where it says, here's my logging in for Peter Smith. And notice that I've got one token right now, which is this one, OLS. Look at the lower, the back, the end of it. It's going to be a different signature in a second. If I click send, I'm going to get another token. Here's my other token. So I take this token. Let's use this one to display my list. Watch, I've already taken more than a second. And if I go over here and I go to my list and I go to my bearer token, right? So I want to change my bearer token to the new one. Here's the new one. And if I click send, it's going to go unauthorized because it's already been more than a second, right? Let's make it something more reasonable, like, something like, 20 seconds. All right, so 20 seconds to test with, I'm saying, right? So again, what we want to do is go back, and I want to go back to here, and I want to log in. So send. I get a brand new token, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10 Mississippi, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I've counted slow. And if I click send again, I'm unauthorized. See? That's how expiry works. So yeah, no, Mississippi. I could have used Mississauga because we're in Canada. But the point is that that's how the expires and works. So if this is a number of seconds, you can also put in a number of days, right? You can put in a number of hours, right? Or you can put in a number of milliseconds. So for example, I don't know, 1 million milliseconds, right? Whatever you want in there in quotations. So what we want to put is something reasonable for expiration. We want to say like, look, you know what? After 30 minutes of use in our website, it's going to expire. And the way to do that is to calculate that. So I figured it's going to be this much. How do I know? It's 30 minutes times 60 seconds a minute is 1800 seconds, which is what we can put here. So 1800 seconds, and then your token is going to expire. This is about 30 minutes. Now, if you're not comfortable with 30 minutes, that's okay. You can put whatever comfort you have in there. But that is something, maybe an hour, something that's reasonable. Because anything beyond that, someone can use that to hijack your session, right? If they know where to look and all that stuff. Now, what about the front end? So now that we know what we need to do on the back end, right? What about the front end to protect the token? Well, remember, there's something else we have to think about too. That the token itself, it's very, very important. The token itself, even though it has a life and stuff like that as well, where is that token going to be stored? If I give you a token, right, on the front end, you need to store it somewhere. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can store it in memory. So if you have a single page application that does not die, you haven't closed the browser, then it's stored in memory, that token, right? And if you close the browser down and the token's gone, you have to log in again, okay? That's one way of doing it. And even though the token's still alive, you can't get that token back. The token's gone and you're never going to see it again because look at that, how big that token is, right? That's a way of doing it. The other way is to store it either in session storage or in local storage. And we know from previous experience that local storage can last forever. It will never go away from your browser. So on the front end, what we need to do is safeguard this and say that the token will expire in, we'll keep checking for the token, as an example, and make sure that it expires, it times out. So the local storage will be wiped out, as an example, after this much inactivity. That's not uncommon to do. And if the token's, timed out, as an example, and you try and access another page of the site that's secure, it's going to redirect you back to the login page. It's going to be unauthorized. And when you get redirected back to the login page, then you have to log in again, right? So that's something we can do on the front end. But it's some careful juggling we're going to have to do. So just remember this, because even though we log out, it doesn't matter. We still have a valid token. If we have access to the token, as long as we have that token in play, we can use it to continue working, even when we're logged out. And that's a vulnerability. Okay. All right, questions around the API. We've kind of built our API pretty good. There's only a couple things that I wanted to change. So in our contact list, again, like before, we can do a little bit of refactoring. So we can kind of do anything that has a function. Again, all I have to do is convert to arrow functions. I think it's a good modern way of doing things. We don't need the display name. We can get rid of that. All right, so that's something we can get rid of. And same thing with these functions, this function here, as well as we can kind of scroll down, this function there. There we go. And finally, this function here. These are all like functions we can convert to arrow functions. There's another one. Right. I mean, it's not going to make any difference functionality-wise, but it's going to make it nice because it's modernized, which is pretty cool. So that's our API. Our API is pretty straightforward. We probably could remove reference to passport here because we're not using it anymore here. We're using it at the configuration level, our app config. And now let's put these last changes up on GitHub. And we'll say final tweaks to Express API. And this is final tweaks before next day when we do some sanitizing. We're going to still do some sanitizing. I mean, like, there's stuff here we don't need anymore, right? Like, here's some stuff we don't need. We don't need at all any of these views. So all these views that are in here, we really don't need them, right? And we don't need these components anymore either. These components and these views are going to be reused. And Cooper, you're going to laugh at me again, but we're going to destroy and rebuild again, like we've been doing this entire semester, right? And why? Because now we're going to be porting this over, these views, to a brand new API, a brand new front end. So these views here on the back end are irrelevant. They're not necessary. And same thing goes with some of this client stuff, this client data. Like, for example, our app.js on the client side and the namespaces and all that stuff that we had before, irrelevant. We don't need any of this stuff anymore here. This has got to go, a bunch of this, if we're going to use any of it, it's going to go on the front end, a different server altogether, right? And the same thing goes with, the same thing goes with our content pages. Really, we only have an app.css, but we don't need this app.css anymore because this app.css is only for the front end. The back end doesn't require any CSS. So pretty much the whole client folder is going to be gone. All we're going to have left is node modules and the server. And we might even get rid of some of those because if you look at our package.json, there's some front end stuff like Font Awesome, Popper.js, Bootstrap, Connect Flash, right, as an example. We also have jQuery, gotta get rid of that. And anything that's front-end technology-wise, we get rid of it because we don't need it. And that goes along with all these dev dependencies. So this is gonna go down and be more streamlined because we don't need all of it as we move into our second project. This is our backend API. We need another one. And then on Friday when we get together, it's gonna be ICE 14, whatever that front end is going to be called. It's mostly going to be React. Okay. I know, it's pretty crazy. Any questions before we go for the day? So that was kind of your tour of how to make a simple Express API.
Just double checking, like nothing's supposed to work like navigationally, right? Like we have nothing navigationally.
No, of course not. All the navigate, everything else is going to happen on the front end if we're going to do anything.
We're going to do that with React or whatever.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, right? Yeah. It's going to be on. It's going to be on Friday. Again, I'm going to probably give you a starter because not that I don't want to do that, but because it's got to be something where it's got to be something where we where we work out the that something is easy and we have to connect it to the back end. It might not be the entire site. I might not be able to do full CRUD in one day. It's just not possible. But I might be able to do some of it. So I might be able to do, for example, logging in and showing the contact list, and that's it. Right. And whatever we can do on Friday, that's going to be your in-class exercise. Okay. Okay, my friend. And Anna, if you want to stick around, we can have a conversation. Okay. Thank you so much. And Cooper, I'll see you on Friday. Thank you.
Yeah. I was watching your game like submission files and all that.